there anything you remember?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Thaddeus Ross.
Whatever this is, Cap, be careful.
This week on Talking About the Movies, Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson dons the new role of Captain America on the big screen in the fourth installment of the series, the very polarizing fourth installment of the series, if you've been reading reviews recently, of Captain America Brave New World. How do I feel about it? Guess you're going to have to listen in to find out. Plus,
Paddington, there's a letter from Peru.
Dear Paddington, it's your Aunt Lucy. She's gone, and we have no idea where she is.
Raised me when I was orphaned as a cub.
If you ever get lost, just roar.
everyone's favorite marmalade-eating bear is back in the third installment of the Paddington series. However, this is the first one without director Paul King, along with a couple of other notable missing pieces in this one. Does it hurt the film series as a whole, or does it only keep the series going strong as it has been going? Well, once again, we're going to have to wait and find out as we talk about Paddington in Peru on the special double feature edition of Talking About the Movies. And welcome to Talking About the Movies, where, of course, we're celebrating 20 years of me covering the biggest new releases of the weekend. And this weekend, there are no bigger new releases than the two that we have on today's show. We've got Paddington returning in his first big adventure since Paddington 2 in Paddington in Peru. But, of course, before we get to that, we got to cover the biggest new release of the weekend, which is undoubtedly Captain America entering a brave new world, both in the movies and also in real life. So in Captain America Brave New World, you have Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie, who has now donned the Captain America persona now that Steve Rogers has been out of the job for the last couple of years, and also following the events of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He finds himself in the middle of an international incident and must discover the motive behind a nefarious global plan, all while you have the President of the United States, Thaddeus Ross, played by now Harrison Ford, who was played by William Hurt in the previous movies, and of course, you have all these other different elements and sooner or later in the movie, Red Hulk eventually shows up, and he's been all over the marketing for the film, and I think it's important to talk about this movie in particular and how people are perceiving the film. The film has not done well with critics. It's got like a very polarizing 50% across the board. Some people like it, some people hate it. But the people that say that people that hate it are trying their hardest to make you people out there who actually kind of like the movie, even saying like, I didn't think it was all that bad. I kind of enjoyed it. Like if you say that, they are all ready for you to just trash on you because they just want the MCU to go away at this point. I literally was online today and I found this right here. Somebody posted this on one of my pages that I'm on Facebook, and I thought to myself, this better be a joke, man, because it's just like this thing right here personifies how people see the MCU, and the fact that, you know, they really do not want the MCU to be any more successful than it had already been. They want it to go away. And yeah, there are a lot of problems in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm going to delve into those with this particular film because they are definitely all prevalent in the course of the film in this case. But like, you should be allowed to like whatever you like. Honestly, you should be allowed to like whatever you want in this world. Nobody should have to tell you, you know, nobody should have to tell you how to feel about a specific movie, and how if you don't give the review that they want to see, then you're automatically public enemy number one. And you know, honestly, it would be kind of fitting in this particular movie, but it doesn't really go down that route at all. But the bottom line here is that whether you like the film or whether you don't like the film, don't try to change somebody's opinion by saying that, well, if you use these certain words here, then you're clearly a bad person because you should not be liking this movie at all. And I saw the film, and I've known pretty much over time now with the MCU movies and just movies in general that, yeah, sometimes you just got to stay away from what critics say about the movie, especially when companies, you know, places like Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 50%, which, as I said before, Rotten Tomatoes is owned by Warner Brothers and Universal, and this is a Disney film. So do you think they're going to be fair to a film like this? No, I don't think so, but you can't trust Rotten Tomatoes, but you can trust places like Metacritic and CinemaScore, and even they have been given this not the best reviews overall. So I went to go see the film, expecting the worst. I'm just like, okay, here comes that moment I've been waiting for. Here comes that moment everyone's been waiting for. That moment I'm going to say, you're right, everybody, this is terrible. You know, you got me now. You got me involved here. Are you happy? But I came out of this movie, and here's the thing. It's not a bad... It really isn't a bad movie. Far from it. I would say it's a decently put together film. It has a ton of problems, and I'm going to delve into those problems as we go along here, but the main takeaway from this movie was just like, wow, people are overrating this movie as something terrible, as something absolutely abysmal, and one of the worst things to come out of the MCU. No, I'm sorry, Eternal still exists, Thor the Dark World still exists. You know, there are so many other movies in this film that are much lower than this film here. Now, if you want to say this is the weakest of the Captain America movies, absolutely. In fact, you can honestly say, like, kind of like with last year with Kung Fu Panda, kind of like a few years ago with Toy Story. There was no need to make a fourth movie in this series, and, you know, yeah, because it's going to be lesser compared to what we had with the Great Trilogy. And like with Captain America, we didn't really need a fourth film, but what they gave us here, I thought overall was pretty good. I like the concepts they had working with here. I like the idea that the whole idea of this movie is supposed to be like a 70s Manchurian Candidate style political thriller. Like, you get that right from the beginning of the movie and from the early elements of the storyline here, because you have a storyline centering around this guy played by Carl Lumbly, what was his name? Isaiah Bradley, who, you know, who has a lot of really good scenes in the movie. In fact, he's one of the best things about the movie in general that I thought was really good. And I like the direction they were going with this political thriller style movie, because you have Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford going at each other, who I thought both of them were really great. Anthony Mackie really has personified this performance of Sam Wilson, and he has really done a great job of making that character his own. I don't think he's quite ready to become as good as someone like Steve Rogers in terms of Captain America, but for what they're trying to do with him, I mean, I thought it worked pretty good. I think there's definitely more you could do with this character with a movie like this. Harrison Ford, I thought, was great as Thunderbolt Ross. I mean, Harrison Ford will usually give 110% in any movie he's in, no matter how bad it is, no matter how mediocre it is. Like, you can tell he is completely game for whatever performance he wants to give in this, and he really works very well here. I thought those three characters were definitely the strongest parts of the movie. I thought when the story was focusing on this subplot that's very similar to like something from a 70s political thriller, I thought it worked. Where it doesn't work is when you start throwing in all the references to the MCU, and this is where a lot of the reshoots come into play here. You know, there was a lot of reshoots that took place during this. They had to basically get new writers to come in here and write new and do these new shots here in general. And yeah, when they add all this stuff involving other Marvel properties, that's when the film really starts to take a nosedive. They bring in characters from the previous Hulk, from the Edward Norton Hulk movie. There's one in particular that, I'm not going to say who it is, but when they show him, it's just like, it's very intriguing what they're doing. It's very intriguing, but what are they going to end up doing with him? And they really don't do anything with him whatsoever. They set up what's going to be I'm guessing what's going to be the main focus for Avengers Doomsday coming up in a couple of years. Not even that. I think Avengers Doomsday comes out next year, if I'm not mistaken, But in the beginning, like, they even show, like, the Sentinel, like, the island where the Eternals thing is at. They actually finally mentioned that in the beginning there, and, you know, and they found a way to bring in, you know, the idea of adamantium, which is, of course, I don't need to tell you where that in particular comes from, but it just, because I think we all know that the MCU is going to bring in the X-Men at some point. I'm sorry for spoiler for you, but you know, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're going to do it eventually. I mean, they've been setting up for the last couple of movies in general, but other than that, though, there's a lot of stuff in here that just doesn't work at all. The movie really has a problem with adding way too much stuff into a film that was already working on one level of itself. But then you got to throw in all these other elements here. You got to add all these pointless villains. You got to add all these pointless characters. Like, I love Giancarlo Esposito. He's Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. I mean, he's done so many other great things in his career. But when they throw him in this movie, it really does not feel like he's fit for this movie. It feels like he's there to be somebody important in another movie. And they keep setting up all these different things. Like, you still have a ton of different things in the MCU that they still have yet to set up, or they're not really going to set up at all down the road. Like, I'm going to delve into that on a Reviewing Network Live episode later tonight, but I just saw an article about it, and it's just like, yeah, a lot of the stuff they were setting up in these movies since the pandemic have yet to pan out whatsoever, and here they're doing more of that. They're trying to build more stuff in here. It's just like, you can't really do that because you're just adding more congestion to the storyline here, and then you got the Red Hulk, which, to be fair, the Red Hulk fight scene with Captain America, I thought it was pretty cool. It was cool to see on the big screen, but man, it definitely felt like it did not need to be the third act climax of the movie, because it's the third act, it's the big third act climax of the film. Like, this is something that should have been maybe for the middle of the movie per se, and like, it just feels like it's forced in there. And there are times when the Red Hulk can look a little too, like, the visual effects aren't really rendered all together here. A lot of the visual effects in this movie really aren't rendered together all that well here at times, but yeah, and it's interesting because this is one of the shortest Captain Marvel movies that are just a little under 2 hours long. So it's not like they're not trying to fix a lot of the problems they've had. They are condensing it down to, instead of making it this big 3.5 hour epic like Eternals was, which was a complete disaster on its own merits, especially in the second half, but I give them credit for at least trying to fix some of the problems here. But the problem is, they're adding more of the same problems we've had in the other MCU films before this. And that's really why I'm very conflicted on how to give this a review. But like I said, I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make it out to be. People are making it out to be one of the biggest disasters of the is in recent history. Like, it's worse than some of the worst movies that DC does, which is another thing too, because a lot of these people that sit there bad mouthing this movie basically are the same people that said, well, why couldn't you give the DCEU a chance? We couldn't give the DCEU a chance because they tried to do the same thing that Marvel did in half the time, with half the effort, and like, it didn't work, and there were a couple good movies here and there, but like, those people, I feel like, are part of the problem with why these movies have failed to connect with a lot of people in general. Well, because those people expect the DCEU to be just grand and epic and amazing in all shapes and sizes, and it didn't do any of that per se. And yes, the MCU is clearly in a more miss than hit territory right now, but to say that it's completely over and done with is completely ridiculous, especially considering how this film still is going to make somewhat of a profit for Disney in general, even if it ends up not making as much money as it did. I mean, there's still a lot of possibilities of what you can do with Sam Wilson and Captain America. I want to see what they do with another movie with him, but I think it also really has to depend on who you get as a director here. I think one of the other big problems here is that, one, the script is a complete mess because you got all these different writers. You can tell that these were all different reshoots that they had. But the director of this is Julius Onah, who did The Cloverfield Paradox, which was a film that had a lot of promise after being sneak previewed on the Super Bowl that one year. And then they said, hey, it's dropping tonight. And then we all watch it. And it's just like, wow, this is a terrible movie. And it's the fact that they got him to direct this movie. I don't think that he was really ready to take on a project like this in general, because what did he really do before Cloverfield Paradox? Not much. He did The Girl's in Trouble, which is a film that I've never even heard of, and Loose, which is a film I've never even heard of. So yeah, you're bringing in these relative TV unknowns to direct these movies. And I'm not saying that it can't work all the way through. We still have to see what, Matt Shankman can do with Fantastic Four, which I think looks pretty cool, and I can't wait to see what he does with that. But, I mean, my final thoughts on the movie is that, yeah, it's a heavily flawed film. It's definitely a film that has a lot of problems, and, you can tell that they're trying to fix some of the problems that the MCU has had recently, but the problem is there are so many other of those same things that we complain about in this film that need to be addressed and fixed up here pretty quickly. And I mean, I don't think the movie is absolutely terrible. There are still a lot of elements that I like about the movie. I like the performances by Mackie Ford and Carl Lumbly. I like the fact that they tried to do something like a 70s paying homage to a 70s style political thriller, but unfortunately it's when they have to add in all the other stuff from the comic books, from the other movies, and from all the other things that it really just becomes a jumbled mess in the end. But with that said, though, I still do enjoy the film. It's not a great movie, it's not a bad movie, it's just somewhere in the middle, and I'm leaning more towards a mild thumbs up on it, a mild thumbs up on it because I did enjoy the stuff that I really enjoyed. I thought it was overall enjoyable. I thought it was overall a good film. It definitely needs a lot. It definitely has a ton of flaws that easily need to be fixed, and hopefully, they won't be done with this character in the future. In the future at all. I hope this isn't the last time we see Sam Wilson in this role. I hope this isn't the last time we see Thaddeus Ross, because I think there's so much you can do with these characters, but they need to come up with better scripts. They need to come up with better directors as a whole to come in and direct these movies. And they really need to change their game at the MCU, because they're really falling into territory where sooner or later that well is going to dry up soon. And it's going to, and if they keep making movies like this, I think it's going to be something that is going to turn on them really, really quickly. But like I said, I give it a mild thumbs up. I thought it was all right, but it definitely is a very flawed film that needs a lot of work to fix with the MCU in general. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. So why don't we go ahead and move on to the second film I have here, which is, I think, a film that most people can appreciate more than Captain America: The Return of Paddington in Peru. So before we get into this, I might as well talk about my thoughts on the previous Paddington movies. I haven't really done it in video form, but I've talked about it before on the website, and I really like both of the Paddington movies. I thought they were very fun. I think there's a lot of heart to them, a lot of charm. The casting is pitch perfect. Hugh Bonneville, Sally Hawkins as the matriarch and patriarch of this family. You know, Ben Whishaw is very good as Paddington. You've got great villainous performances by Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant. I mean, these are really good, fun movies, and I think a lot of people nowadays, when they make movies that are kind of this fish out of water storyline, I think they're taking a lot from what the Paddington movies have done, and we're getting much better movies out of it, like we got recently with the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, and among other things. But this is the first one without director Paul King involved, and that was one of the things I was worried about going into this movie. But Paddington returns to Peru to visit his beloved Aunt Lucy, who now resides at the home for retired bears. With the Brown family in tow, a thrilling adventure ensues when a mystery plunges them into an unexpected journey through the Amazon rainforest and up to the mountain peaks of Peru. So this is more of an action-adventure film. This isn't one that's taking place more within London, England. No, this is an adventure that really becomes more of a grand adventure. Like, this is kind of like the Hey Arnold jungle movie of this series, if you will. But it's still a really good movie, and it's still a very well-made film, especially even without the director Paul King involved in this film, which I thought as soon as he was gone, this thing was going to lose a lot of quality to it, and not really. There's a little bit here and there where the quality kind of dips a little bit, but never enough to the point where you could say, oh, this is an unmitigated mess of a film. No, they still have a lot of the same charm, a lot of the same heart, a lot of the same great characters that we like in here. One of the notable differences in this film, though, is that Sally Hawkins is not playing the mother in this movie anymore, Mary Brown. Like, she's now replaced by Emily Mortimer, and yeah, there's definitely a major difference between the two of them. I think Sally Hawkins, really champions that role much better. But Emily Mortimer did a pretty good job filling in the role in general. Like, there's no real major flaws to the film that I can really say is terrible about it. But, I mean, the action is pretty good. The epic scale works to this film's advantage. It never feels like they're just doing this because they have to up the ante. Like, there's a reason why the adventure is much more grand and epic, and it doesn't fall out of the same formula that has worked with the other Paddington movies. Everything about it works very well. You have really good new additions to the cast, including Antonio Banderas. Haley Atwell's also in here, too. Just a lot of really good things about the film. There really isn't much more I can say about it, per se, because it's really everyone has been pretty much saying the same thing. It's got a lot of the same charm to it. The heart is still there. You just love seeing Paddington. He's just such a great character. Ben Whishaw does a great job playing that character in general. And it's just a really good, fun film. A film you could take the family to. And even if you don't have even if you don't have family that would be interested in this per se, you yourself could still find a lot to enjoy about it. Like, I found a lot to enjoy about it, even though I don't have kids. I don't have a family in general, but in terms of me having like a wife and kids, but I could still watch this movie and be like, this is still really good entertainment all across the board. It is such a good, fun time all around. Paddington in Peru, kind of like with Wallace and Gromit, like, it's kind of hard to make a movie like this, a movie from this series, that bad, but they have yet to do that, thank God. Hopefully that will continue on with future films, because there's definitely going to be more of these movies, but I'll definitely be there on opening weekend to see it, no question about it. So yeah, this one I give a big thumbs up to, Paddington in Peru. So if you're going to pick one of the two sequels to go see this weekend, I say see Paddington first, and then you could probably check Captain America out later on down the road. But so there you go. Overall, a good weekend for movies in general. But that's my thoughts on those two movies. Let me know your thoughts down below on Captain America and Paddington. What did you think of those films? Am I wrong on this? Am I right on this? You let me know. But with all that said, that's going to wrap this episode of Talking About the Movies up. On next week's show, no big new releases hit theaters, but this weekend there is a new Bridget Jones's movie that's streaming on Peacock, and I'll use that episode next week to talk about that film. But here's some good word of mouth about it, though, so I'm definitely kind of curious to see how that's going to play out. But with all of that said, thank you for joining us, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check out some of the other episodes I did, check out the reviews I did for Love Hurts, and also Kind of Pregnant last week, and I will see you guys next time for another episode. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.